Hello and welcome to the Uneducated PT Podcast with me, your host, Carl O'Rourke. The goal of this podcast is to bring on interesting and knowledgeable people from all walks of life, learn a little something from each conversation, and for you, the listener, to learn something from each episode. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel, press the box below, show some support, and I'll see you on the next episode. Dan, welcome to the Uneducated PT Podcast. Can you give me a bit of background into your profession before we get into it?
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. Obviously, I'm Dan. I am a registered dietitian here in the United States. I don't know if your viewers are from kind of other countries here in the U.S. I'm also a certified personal trainer. I have a master's degree in human nutrition.
Deadly. And can you give me a little bit of an insight into, let's say, the type of problems that clients come to you to help them solve?
Yeah, so obviously it varies. The most common issues that my clients come to me with tend to be body composition, so weight loss, muscle gain, that kind of thing. A lot of my clients, since I do accept insurance here in the United States, I do get more of a general population, rather than kind of very fitness specific. So for those folks, it is a lot of, again, kind of weight management, managing cardiovascular disease risk, that kind of thing. I do also get some more kind of fitness minded folks, especially, on my Instagram. I do more like the powerlifting stuff. So I do have some kind of folks that are, more so kind of either trying to lose, a few pounds for aesthetic reasons or gaining muscle. So body composition, weight loss, that is really, I would say, most common. Occasionally, folks will have kind of specific medical conditions, as well, but that's really most common, I would say.
Yeah, you said you touched on the powerlifting, and I want to go into to that topic as well. But before we transition into that and into your sport, you touched on even taking insurance and helping a lot of the general population. What are some of the struggles you think that the general population are facing right now in terms of their health and their weight?
Yeah, so, well, obviously, again, here in the U.S., the majority of adults do struggle with their weight. Obviously, we do live in, what some call an obesogenic society, where very kind of calorie-dense, hyper-palatable foods are readily available. So it's very easy to eat in a calorie surplus for a lot of folks. And obviously, it's very easy to be very sedentary, just with kind of how many of us work, in office settings and whatnot. So just, some of the biggest challenges are, not becoming obese because of, just how our society is kind of set up. Also the fact that kind of obviously social media is so big now. We do see a lot more nutrition misinformation or disinformation. So a lot of people struggle with their weight and also are confused about how to go about losing weight or improving their health as well. So that's kind of a big component there, as well. So many people have, these really common health issues, be it obesity or other issues related to nutrition and lifestyle, and they're not, and a lot of them are confused about what to do. They get all these different mixed messages from all different people. So again, obviously, I could probably go on about the different issues that people, the general population, struggle with, but just off the top of my head, that's one of the biggest.
Yeah, and what I really love about your account is first of all, you come off very empathetic in regards to that subject, and also you obviously come with a lot of science towards that. What are some of the misconceptions you would say that people have around obesity?
So there's a lot. One of those, and I know you mentioned you kind of touched on empathy, something that some people kind of think is that people with obesity are inherently lazy, which I would say is not true. Obesity is very multifactorial. I mean, it's both simple and it's also complex because
Yeah.
yes, it is ultimately calories in, calories out, eating too many calories, but
Which is the only component we hear from a lot of people. Move
right,
more, eat less.
right, right. But it's yes, calorie balance is the driving factor, but there's so many different factors that affect calorie balance. Like emotional kind of regulation, for example, struggling with, different emotional states, people with anxiety, depression, ADHD, these kind of, mental health issues make it extremely difficult for people, and something else is that I think for folks like maybe you and me, and maybe some of your listeners, for those of us that are really sort of inclined towards fitness, or again, I can kind of speak towards myself, kind of obsessed with fitness. I mean, it's my entire livelihood is
Yeah.
nutrition, and
It's literally my entire identity, as sad as that is.
yeah. So for people like you and me, it might be easy to look at people who struggle and be like, well, you're just lazy, like just do better. But we all operate with limited resources, limited time, limited energy. And for people whose lives don't revolve around fitness, it's a lot different. Some people may have, several kids, or they may have kids who, I don't have any kids. It's very easy for me to say, oh, just work harder. But I don't have kids. I can kind of sleep until whenever I want. I work for myself. I'm very privileged, and a lot of people don't have that privilege. They do have, kids that they have to take care of. They've got a lot of other kind of life stressors, or maybe they have, elderly parents they need to take care of. Maybe they're a single parent. Maybe they have to work a night shift, and are forced to get really poor sleep, or have to work multiple jobs to keep food on the table. It's very easy for us who are very fitness oriented to kind of say for people who do struggle, like, hey, you just need to do better. But unless we have that empathy and we kind of understand why it's so difficult for so many people, and how, and until we kind of start to understand others' kind of worldview, I think the idea that people who struggle with obesity are inherently lazy is not true. And it's also very unhelpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you, because you understand that, and because you understand the nuance around obesity or even weight gain in general, does that help you when trying to help a client in terms of, understanding realistic expectations for what they're going to achieve in a certain time, and then trying to help them to understand them expectations?
Yeah. I certainly try to communicate that. A lot of people, and I'm sure you've encountered this as well. A lot of people who do want to lose weight or improve their health, especially if they're in kind of a very low point, they have, at least at one point in time, they have very high motivation, and they want to do a lot all at once. They want to completely change their diet, go on a zero sugar diet, or eliminate all carbs, or they want to, lose 3 pounds a week, and they want to make really drastic changes, and I think that understanding of the nuances of obesity and how there's so many different factors that come into play, like I was saying, if someone has kids, if someone has like a lot of other life responsibilities, I think having that understanding and also that empathy is really important if you do work with clients to, like you said, kind of set expectations. Generally what I tell people is, with some exceptions, but generally if someone wants to lose weight or improve their health, sustainable progress is probably going to be slower than they would want.
Yeah.
But, slower progress that is sustained is better than faster progress or faster weight loss that you end up gaining the weight back. So I do try to, really kind of set expectations and encourage patience. among folks that are trying to lose weight. Obviously, it's easier said than done, though, because most of us as humans, we want, when we're working really, really hard, we want to see results immediately. And it's really hard not to see that.
Yeah, 100%. So like I even notice it in myself if I have a goal or something I want to achieve, whether it's a fitness goal, whether it's a business goal, I'm saying to myself, oh, but I want that now and I'm getting frustrated now. And then if you were to coach yourself as you would coach a client in weight loss, you have to say, well, you can't really force the result because you're not going to get the behaviors and habits in that time if you try to do it too quick.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I naturally have sort of an addictive personality, which in some ways helps. It
Yeah.
helps with kind of having a business, and I'm sure you could kind of attest to that as well. But it makes it hard to stay patient. And it's something like I noticed in myself, like when like I said, if I have, a specific goal, or like if you have a specific goal, we want to just go really, really hard for it and get it right away. So I try and kind of remind myself of that when I'm working with clients to really understand, like, they're just a person too, and I have to kind of acknowledge their desire for results immediately. So that is definitely pretty important.
Yeah,
When
but
working with folks.
when you do get them like quick results, whether that is losing a kilo or two, like that's also motivating to keep them on track to go on those well. So it is important to have, even though you want them to stick at it long term, to have them initial quick wins or to go all in at it at the start. I suppose there is a benefit to that.
There is.
Yeah.
There is. And I know there's some folks that advocate for, wanting to kind of try to be more restrictive early on to get that quick weight loss, to get people more motivated. It's not necessarily something that I agree with, but yes, if someone does experience a rapid loss on the scale, they're going to be more motivated than if, you spend your first several weeks with them as a personal trainer or dietitian or clinician or what have you, and they lose half a pound. They might be more likely to fall off, and these are all things that we have to consider as practitioners, as personal trainers, as coaches, what have you. And I mean, towards that end, I do try to kind of have, kind of also kind of encourage other markers of kind of success and progress rather than just weight on the scale. It's not always super effective, but kind of focusing on if someone has changed certain habits, if someone has gone from eating takeout 6 times per week to eating it 3 times per week, that in and of itself, independent of any progress, is a win. That person is making more home cooked meals. They are probably saving money. They are, oftentimes they'll feel better, just kind of objectively feel better. So kind of focusing on those wins, or obviously going to the gym, more regularly if that's someone's goal. So I do think it can be effective for practitioners to try and kind of think of what are other like rewards that people can kind of obtain during the process. How can you make the process of behavior change, weight loss, etc., kind of more rewarding in and of itself? Obviously, it's a lot easier said than done, and it doesn't work for some folks, But
Do you think that's just down to different personalities?
Different personalities, yeah. Again, a lot of people aren't ready for change, and that's okay, but it definitely depends on the individual. It depends on their, I think, level of motivation. I do think it's as practitioners, dietitians, personal trainers, etc. I do think that we can use components of like motivational interviewing to basically enhance people's intrinsic motivation. I think that we can all do that. I think that providing that kind of encouragement and support can be helpful, but yeah, it really just depends on the individual. It depends on someone's readiness for change. It depends on someone's kind of trust in the process. It depends on someone's trust in you. So, and I also think it's like realistic. It's important for us as practitioners to kind of acknowledge the fact that not everyone is necessarily ready to change right now, and that's okay. But if you can even, start to enhance someone's intrinsic motivation for change, even if they end up kind of quitting or giving up, that doesn't mean that what you did was a waste of time. You might have, like, maybe, let's say you have a client, you're working with them for like a month or two, maybe they lose a couple pounds, but then they get kind of demotivated and they stop. The guidance and help that you may have provided them up to that point, some kind of suggestions or tips around nutrition or general ideas around how to kind of view, nutrition and habit change in general, maybe 6 months or a year from now or 2 years from now, when they have, more motivation again, maybe something happens where they kind of want to kick things into gear. Maybe what you said or what you did in the long run does actually benefit them and they remember that. And again, I may be kind of going off on a tangent, so stop me, if I am. But I think it's important for us, like something I try and think of whenever I'm just working with a client, and I personally work with people one-on-one through, video calls. I try and just kind of think, how can I help this person right now to the best of my ability and be kind of present with them, even if they do end up kind of, they don't want to see me again or whatever, or I don't work with them forever. How can I just be of benefit to this person right now in this moment? And I find if I take that kind of attitude, I'm more likely to be of value to them, whether or not they hit kind of their immediate goal. If we can kind of think more long-term, like, hey, if you're working with a client, if you're a personal trainer in the gym, if you are working with clients, if you're a nutrition coach or what have you, or a dietitian, you're working with people, when you're working with people or doing their check-in, how can you just one human to another human, how can you, with your knowledge and expertise, how can you help them? And maybe that's even just by being empathetic and by just being there with them during a challenging time, So I guess kind of this is a very long-winded way of saying, like, don't think that just because, maybe someone didn't achieve their goal of losing 1 pound this week, or maybe they, stopped after several sessions with you, don't let that deter you from being of value to other people, and I think even independent of like making money, obviously we want to all make money, like, or independent of the client's goals, like there's a lot of ways that you can just be of benefit to other people, and it'll make your life and your kind of career more fulfilling if you kind of think of things in that way. I completely don't remember what your question was, but
no, it was about that, because it was about the personalities of being ready to take on board the information. But I suppose, like you just said, if you have loads of different metrics of how people can win, it means they're more likely to win, they're more likely to succeed. That there's more metrics of success, and when you were speaking there, it actually brought me back to an old client that I had. I think she finished with me 6 months ago. She was from New York, and she didn't really have that much weight to lose, to be honest.
Yeah.
And in the 6 months, she didn't lose any weight. And, she said that to me. She goes, I haven't lost any weight in the 6 months, but everything has changed, because, the weight that she didn't really needed to lose wasn't physical. It was like the weight of unrealistic expectations she was putting on herself. She was always putting herself down. She was, she didn't have any relationship with exercise. Now she runs half marathons, and, she came for weight loss, and it wasn't really about weight loss in the long run. Anyway, it was about her relationship with food. It was about her relationship with herself. And they're all metrics that people don't think about when they come in to work with a professional.
Yeah, and I mean, if you really want to be kind of like meta about that, think about how now that she has a better relationship with herself, like maybe in a better relationship with food, maybe she has more mental space and bandwidth to build stronger relationships with other people, and think about how much of a benefit that will have to her entire life and the people around her, because you worked with her for 6 months. So yeah, you worked with her for 6 months, and this is just an example. She didn't lose any weight. You could kind of look at that very superficially and be like, well, I didn't do my job, when in reality, think about the value that you put into this person's life and just into, again, I'm not trying to get too meta, but like into the universe because of like what you did. So it's really important, again, just to think about like supporting people to the best of your ability, and just trying to be helpful. And I think by doing that, by taking that approach, it can take a lot of pressure off of us as practitioners, personal trainers, coaches, what have you. I think for many of us, we kind of we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get our clients results, to do our job, to get clients what they want, even though there's a lot of factors that might not always get them that direct result. But if we can just think of in terms of how can I be of the most benefit to this person, obviously within reasonable, while being reasonable, it really opens up a lot of ways to be of value to other people. So yeah.
And that's a really good point that you mentioned as well, because I know myself, if that was me maybe 6 or 7 years ago when I didn't have the experience, I would have put pressure on myself to be like, okay, this person has lost weight. I need to push them further to lose weight when they weren't ready to lose weight. And maybe that results in me putting pressure on unhealthy methods to get someone to lose weight, when in reality, the goal is just to be helpful to that client.
Yeah, exactly. Thinking about, like, again, how you can best be helpful and provide value. So I think it's just very, important, both for kind of getting the clients in the long run, giving them the results that they really need, even if it's not necessarily the results that they initially came to you for. And also it's also just good for our peace of mind as practitioners to go to bed knowing, hey, we did good. For most of us, I would say, for a lot of us, maybe we get into the fitness space because of our own struggles, or at least part of us wants to we want to go to bed at night knowing, hey, I genuinely helped someone. And that can really help us with that, by just taking that approach of, again, when you're working with someone or a group of people, how can I be of most benefit to the best of my ability to this person or this group of people? And as long as you do that, even if it completely doesn't go well, which happens, things happen, you at least know that you did the best that you could.
100%. Speaking of actual body composition changes, I wanted to go through a few of your quotes that I really enjoyed, and I just wanted you to kind of deep dive a little bit more into them. So one of them was, fat loss necessities, feeling hungry, at least occasionally. You need to be comfortable with occasional discomfort. Can you go in a little bit on that one?
Yeah. So for folks who need to lose like a lot of weight, they might be able to just make some very basic changes with, like, eating more vegetables, more protein, and not even feel that hungry. But, for most folks, at least for folks who it's like they more so want to lose weight aesthetically, like the less weight that you need to lose, the more discomfort you'll generally feel. And just in general, when you are trying to lose weight, as obviously you need a calorie deficit, which quite literally means you're giving your body less energy than it needs to maintain its current body weight. So that is going to necessitate usually some level of physical hunger. And I think a lot of us, myself included, we do everything we can to avoid feeling hungry. I think certainly a lot of folks they forget what that physical hunger feels like. So feeling at least a little bit of physical hunger now and then, maybe in the periods kind of like surrounding our, before meals, is very common and to be expected when we're eating in a calorie deficit. So I think towards that end, having a more acceptance-based approach towards hunger, like knowing it's going to come up at least now and then, and that's okay, is very beneficial. Now, that's not to say to kind of just, starve yourself or allow yourself to feel really, really hungry, but, having a little bit of hunger, before meals is going to be, I think, in my opinion, inevitable. Obviously in the extreme example of someone who's like doing a physique show where they're getting to unhealthy levels of low body fat, they're going to feel a lot of hunger. But I think having an approach where you're making dietary changes to obviously get the most satiety for your calories. So that's going to be, as I'm sure you know, like relatively high protein, relatively high fiber, eating a lot of foods that are low in calorie density. So not a lot of calories per gram of food. That's going to be like your fruits and vegetables, your very low fat popcorn, things like that. Obviously doing that, but being okay with the fact that occasionally you will feel some levels of physical hunger, that's okay.
Yeah.
For fat loss is really, really important.
Let's say you're dieting down to a low level of body fat. What are some things that you make sure that you implement that, okay, we know we need to eat more protein, we know we need to eat more fiber, we know that we're going to feel hungry at stages, but we want to make sure to, crave that as much as possible. What are some other things that people can do to help them along going into a dieting phase, or just getting that little bit leaner, that makes the process a little bit easier?
Yeah. So especially if someone's trying to get like pretty lean, like a relatively low level of body fat, like for men where you can see a six pack. In my opinion, it's going to be hard, not impossible, but harder to do that if you're not keeping quantitative track of your calorie intake. Again, you can get that lean, and people have certainly gotten that lean without tracking their intake, but you are kind of, to some extent, going against your physiology a little bit. If you're trying to get to lower levels of body fat, your body doesn't want to get really, really lean. So I do think that being kind of intentional about your calorie intake and having that quantitative data is going to be helpful. I mean, what I generally recommend to people is, a lot of folks may track their intake and use like a MyFitnessPal or something, and just kind of whatever arbitrary target it sets for them. What I generally recommend to people, if they do want to use calorie tracking as a means for fat loss, and like I said, if you want to get really lean, it's something that will be very helpful for a lot of people, is to first track their intake as accurately as possible without necessarily following a very strict calorie target, and also tracking their weight, in the mornings, once per morning on a daily basis, and doing that for several weeks. Daily weigh-ins first thing in the morning and tracking their intake just as accurately as they can. People with a menstrual cycle may need to do it a bit kind of longer, because weight fluctuations will occur during, depending on the phase of the menstrual cycle. But doing that for several weeks' time, and then looking at average, body weight and calorie intake, and using that to determine, okay, what is my maintenance? So then what do I need to eat in order to lose weight? So for example, say, you track your calorie intake, not worrying about whatever kind of goal whatever app you're using has, but just tracking what you're eating, and you're eating over 4 weeks, an average of 2,500 calories per day. And let's say over that time, you're looking at your trend weight, your average your average weight over time, and over that few weeks, you lose half a pound per week, theoretically, or you lose, I think I said 4 weeks, so 2 pounds over that 4 weeks. You're eating in about a 250 calorie deficit. So because 3,500 calories is a pound, so that then your maintenance is 2,750, and then from there you can kind of plan your diet around that and make adjustments accordingly. So it's kind of a long-winded way of saying, to answer your question, I think quantitative tracking is something that is going to be very, very helpful for trying to get really lean. And I would recommend doing it by first just tracking without a specific target, and then using your own data to determine, an appropriate calorie target. Is tracking quantitative tracking for everyone? No. Certainly, folks who have histories of disordered eating or eating disorders, it may be contraindicated, but it is something, and I think also in those folks trying to get really, really lean is also contraindicated. But that's at least one thing, that I think is going to be helpful for a lot of folks. I mean, besides that, really just a way of being in a calorie deficit that is sustainable for the individual,
Yeah.
I think is really the biggest thing, and that varies tremendously from person to person.
Yeah, I think definitely the leaner you get, the less room for use of a better word, mistakes. There's the less
Yep.
mistakes you can make with the leaner you want to get down. So being able to be as accurate as possible
Yeah.
is probably going to be helpful. Well, then going from, let's say, someone who wants to get relatively lean to someone who does want to lose weight but wants to make it more of a lifestyle change so they can feel better about themselves. One quote of yours is, treat social events, vacations, and occasional restaurant meals as practice opportunities. Why is that an important thing in terms of someone, wanting to lose weight in regards to like a lifestyle?
Yeah. So again, within the context of someone who's trying to lose weight, not necessarily trying to get ultra lean or lean for a competition, but just trying to lose weight for general health, eating out, takeout, vacations, and social events. Obviously, all of those instances make it more difficult to eat healthfully, but those are all components of just kind of having a balanced life. And most of us will, hopefully most of us are able to take vacations now and then, and engage in social events. And we need to have these skills to be able to eat in a way that is relatively consistent with our goals while still enjoying life. It's easier on paper to lose fat when you're eating all 21 meals per week or what have you at home. You're weighing everything
hiding in your room until you lose all the weight that you want.
Yeah. But is that really a way to live? No. And where do people most struggle when they're on and I say on a diet, quote unquote, because I try to kind of steer people away from that thinking, not so much the all or nothing, but people tend to struggle most when they have a meal out with people, and they don't know what to do, or they have a vacation or a birthday or something. So learning how to maybe not be as strict with your nutrition in those instances, but still eating in a way that doesn't really set you back. And that's a skill to do. For example, if your partner wants to go out to eat, it's your anniversary. Are you going to tell them, no, I need to stick to my macros. I'm going to have my chicken and rice and broccoli in the fridge? No, I would not recommend doing that. I would go out with your partner, but depending, and again, this is kind of something where it depends on kind of your goals. Maybe you do have more kind of a treat meal, but maybe you more so opt for a dish that's centered around a non-fried protein, like a sirloin steak or a chicken or salmon dish, or even like a burger, rather than a huge thing of pasta that might be 2,000 calories in and of itself, right? Maybe you limit or avoid caloric beverages, which saves you several hundred calories. Maybe you share dessert. Like if you go to the Cheesecake Factory, a piece of cheesecake's got like 1,600 calories. Maybe you share it, or maybe you get, you share French fries. Kind of thinking in those terms, or like, when you go on vacation, again, enjoying the vacation, enjoying kind of some meals out, but also not having every meal be like a binge fest because, you're being so strict when you're not on vacation that you just have to go all out on vacation. Maybe you kind of find more of a middle ground where, you enjoy some more fun foods like pizza, pasta here and there, but maybe instead of having 4 slices of pizza, you have 1 or 2. Or maybe if you get a big thing of pasta, you eat some of it and you bring the rest of it home. Thinking about these kind of middle ground type things, or if it's like your daughter's 6th birthday party, you have a slice of cake rather than 4. These are things that take practice. It takes practice to do that, especially in the context of social events and where others might be kind of eating a lot. And you're not kind of within the control of your own environment. But a lot of people struggle, especially with that kind of all or nothing mindset, when they are following, especially when people think of it as a quote unquote diet. I'm following a diet, right? So then it's like, I'm not following a diet when I'm at my daughter's 6th birthday party. So, I'm going to eat whatever I want because I'm not on the diet. I get to cheat. we don't want to think like that. We want to think there's your body doesn't know whether you're on a quote unquote diet or not on a diet. It just digests and assimilates food. So if we can kind of think of things in that kind of more so like a spectrum, like I've posted before, I was actually just talking about this with the client that I had before we hopped on, about thinking of your nutrition less like a light switch where you're either on or off, but more like a dimmer where it shines at various intensities. Maybe, if you've got a couple of weeks where you're just at home, travel, spouse is away, you're kind of more on point. Whereas, hey, if you're on vacation, the light shines dimmer, you're more so having fun, but it's not off. You're still, or maybe it's just, you're listening to hunger and satiety cues, stopping eating when you're at like a 7 out of 10, on the fullness scale instead of a 10 out of 10, so that's kind of, again, I apologize if I'm kind of rambling here, but again, when it comes to social events, meals out, occasional takeout, it's important that we enjoy life, and that we have our fitness and lifestyle revolve around our life and not the other way around. Obviously, there's kind of some nuances there, and yes, to some extent, obviously depending on the goal, but some sacrifices do kind of to some extent need to be made, especially if you're trying to get particularly lean or getting lean for a show. Like if you're trying to do a physique show, then yeah, you may have to avoid some of those social events or not eat anything at those. But if it's just eating, like you said, just for general population, they're just trying to get a bit healthier, reduce their risk for heart disease and diabetes. Thinking in terms of these terms of kind of thinking of these as practice opportunities is very important. And that, kind of thinking about making the process more rewarding, I like to kind of think of those as like kind of tell people that it's like a practice opportunity, because
it's a really good reframe. When I read that, I was like, that's a really good reframe. It's not something that you need to be worried about. It's something that you should encourage, that this is practice for life to get better at this thing that you're trying to do, of practice an imperfect action.
Yeah. And even if someone maybe doesn't do so great, they do eat a bit more and they're a bit bloated, rather than them saying, hell, I screwed up. The hell with it. I'm going to binge now. Instead, we can say, okay, it didn't go quite as how we wanted. Let's kind of use that as a learning opportunity, and for next time. And kind of having that approach, it keeps people in the game longer. It keeps people going longer, So yeah, that's what I think about that.
Do you think, when you got into this space, the space of nutrition, you would think that a lot of the time you were going to be speaking about nutrition, but it seems like a lot of the time you're actually speaking about behavior change and changing people's perspectives on this kind of all or nothing mindset, well, especially when it comes to the one-to-one calls and the coaching.
Yeah, so I actually remember, so here, at least here in the US, in order to become a registered dietitian, you have to do a particular undergraduate degree. Now they're making you do a master's, but then you also have to do a 1,200-hour unpaid internship. It's kind of like a medical, like what doctors do for a residency. Yeah. And I remember my internship director during a rotation on counseling, I remember her saying, most of the time, it's not about the food.
Yeah.
I specifically remember her saying that. And it's true. I mean, for some people it is like it but when you're working one-on-one with people, especially the general population, most people know on some level that it does come down to calories. Some people don't, but most people do. They know they should be eating more fruits and vegetables. They know they should eat more lean protein. They know they should eat less ultra processed food, less sweets, that they should exercise more. But again, it's a lot of it is kind of the way people think about food, the way people use food to cope with difficult emotions, the way kind of people, like I said, the way people think, and specifically I think the all or nothing thinking and the expectations people have for what they think they need to be doing, versus what they actually need to do. They often think they need to do. They think they need to be a lot more strict than they actually do need to be. So it does very oftentimes come down to more than just the food. It is oftentimes about these various other factors.
Yeah. Well, this literally ties into the next quote that I was going to quote you on, which was the most underrated component of any nutritional regime is coping with stress, anxiety,
Yeah.
depression, and boredom.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think it's something that, you know, I would say for probably the majority of folks that struggle with their weight, it is really about that, whether it be, the foods that are higher in calories and more easy to overeat are the foods that are hyper palatable, which means they're just really tasty, fried foods, sugary foods. And a big reason why a lot of people turn to those foods, it's not necessarily because they're lazy, or it's not because they think those foods are healthy. It's, those foods are very rewarding. They from what I understand, increase like dopamine. Again, I'm not gonna get in the whole like kind of like dopamine thing, but these foods, these sugary foods, fatty foods, foods high in calories, do make us feel good in the very short term. Anyone can tell you that. And I think a lot of people do get in the habit of using food, whether consciously or not, to cope with difficult emotional states, myself included. Okay, yeah. So when I talk about these things, I am also a human. I struggle with these things too. But be it anxiety, and people want kind of food just to kind of numb that, or depression or boredom, especially. A lot of it comes down to those things, so learning how to, cope with those difficult emotions and how to quench those difficult emotions, or in ways that are not food, or in ways other than food. And again, this is kind of where like therapy can come into play, or at the very least acknowledging that, that it is about a lot more than kind of just the food, and really, people kind of recognizing what kind of emotional triggers they may have, and kind of getting to the heart of that is really, really important for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, I think as you just said, I think even just the awareness of it, to be like, okay, I'm not lazy. It's not that I don't have willpower. It's that I've had a hard day's work, so that I haven't got to do anything for myself. It's that I need to feel something, and that's why I'm opting for this chocolate bar rather than me trying to willpower my way into these results.
Right. Exactly. And like you said, it's about it's a lot of people think they need willpower, but we can't really white knuckle our way into long-term habit change. Yes, some discipline is required, some sacrifice is required, but a lot of it is kind of coming down to those sort of deeper issues and how we use food to cope with these difficult emotions.
As a dietitian, what is something that bothers you about your profession, or something that you would change in the industry?
That's a tough one. I guess I'll just say kind of in the fitness industry as a whole, rather than just dietitians. I do think
more even in the fitness industry and the health space and everything that gets.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the big one in this may be kind of like going like really big fitness industry. I think there's a lot of focus on fear mongering, on what foods or what ingredients are really bad for you that you shouldn't have, be it dairy, be it gluten, be it to some extent red meat, be it, I mean, the more kind of extreme folks who are like the carnivore folks, they'll kind of say all kinds of things, or seed oils is probably like the most controversial one of all of them, about specific foods or specific ingredients, ingredients with kind of long names that you cannot ever have. And I'll be honest, I don't think that's something that's going to go away. I don't, because much of the fitness industry, or much of, I would say, I guess a lot of media, be it social media, which is obviously ever present now, or just kind of websites or articles in general, which, the goal of most media is to get your eyeballs and is to get your attention. It's an attention game, right? Social media, what posts get the most likes, most follows, etc., generally it's going to be ones that catch your attention.
Extreme, extreme
Yeah,
statements.
yeah, or that with media in general, news media, what have you, they want to get your attention, because it's just kind of the way social media is now, and demonizing certain foods, saying kind of more extreme statements, that this is bad for you, like seed oils are terrible. We as humans respond to fear very strongly, and social media, like, or media in general, again, they want to get your attention, so people are like a fear mongering headline, or a headline, or an idea that kind of creates fear among people is going to get more attention
What
than.
what do you think is the dangers of creating more fear around food for the general public? Like, why is it so detrimental?
Yeah, because for most people, well, for one, outside of the context of specific food allergies or intolerances, there really are no ingredients or specific foods that are unequivocally bad for you. I mean, there's trans fats which aren't even found in the food supply anymore, but for the most part, your body is pretty resilient, and that's just kind of not how nutrition works. But the biggest thing, it kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier, is sustainability. If someone thinks that they need to avoid all dairy, all gluten, and all seed oils, and all processed foods in order to be healthy, it kind of encourages that all or nothing mindset, where if they end up having a piece of cake, oh no, the gluten in the cake, the seed oils in the cake, the hell with it, I might as well just eat a lot more. And they'll be it really feeds into this very kind of strict all or nothing mindset. And the more inclusive people can be in their nutrition and fitness while still getting to their goals, the better. We don't want to, because it is, so much about sustainability. We want to do everything that we want to restrict as little as possible. I'm not saying there's no restriction involved. Obviously, a calorie deficit necessitates a calorie restriction, but we want to minimize the amount of restriction that people need to exert to make things as sustainable as possible. So with the fear mongering of various foods, and saying certain foods or certain ingredients are bad for you, people might tell me, like, why are you encouraging people to eat seed oils? Well, I'm not necessarily, but I'm discouraging people from worrying about whether a food has safflower oil in it, because it doesn't matter. If anything, actually, those types of fats are actually going to be more healthful, from a cardiovascular standpoint, than saturated fats. But because the more, like I said earlier, people have limited time, have limited resources, limited time, limited energy, limited willpower. The more their time is spent on things that they don't need to be focused on, like whether their salad dressing has safflower oil in it or sunflower seed oil in it, because Paul Saladino said that seed oils are bad. The less time, energy, resources they have for more sustainable changes, the more likely they are going to be kind of more towards that all or nothing mindset. So in terms of like the harms, that's kind of what I would say there.
Yeah. And also, it can also put pressure. I spoke about this on a podcast recently. Also puts, depending on what they're trying to scare you away from and scare you towards, it can put a lot of pressure on people's financial situation as well.
Yep. Oh, yeah. I mean, and again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with getting all organic or all unprocessed, but it is going to be more expensive. Whole Foods is more expensive. And if someone is spending extra money to get kind of organic produce, or a certain brand that says they're like GMO free or seed oil free, is it really necessary? Not necessarily.
Like, that's fine if that's what you want, but to believe that that's what you need because someone on the internet told you that you're going to destroy your health, it's not really fair.
Right. I agree.
As a dietitian, what information or advice do you think the general public should know more about?
Just in general, I mean, I think that people should know that healthy eating is not healthy eating is pretty straightforward, and that, again, kind of another quote that I mentioned before is boring nutrition advice is correct nutrition advice. So people, I think, need to know that, hey, kind of the what you think of as kind of generally healthy, that kind of sounds obvious is kind of true, kind of common sense, like eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, eat pretty high protein, eat a lot of whole grains, limit processed foods, limit sweets. People just need to know that, and people need to know that they don't need to completely eliminate any foods unless they have an allergy or an intolerance. And people also need to know that a lot of what they see on social media, that's kind of like, or just general media in general, like just kind of like be it New York Times even, or whatever, CNN, that those kind of eye-catching headlines are not necessarily true, and that the basics are really most important. I guess one other thing is, and again, this is a different tangent, is that for most folks who are physically able to, some form of weight-bearing exercise is going to be really, 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 really beneficial.
Yeah. Well, that moves me nicely onto what I wanted to speak about with you last, which is essentially your sport, powerlifting. How long have you been doing that?
I've been working out with some forms of squats, bench press, and deadlift, since like 2012, 2013, 2014. I didn't really get into like competing in the sport till 2018. It's really just been the last handful of years or so that I've more so kind of focused on that.
Why powerlifting?
I just I wanted to kind of have some kind of way to show off my strength and to have a means to have a goal to work towards. So it just kind of made sense, to have a way of being proud of kind of my progress and being proud of like strength gains, just kind of a way to kind of, I guess, kind of have something to show for my hard work.
Were you just training regularly in the gym? Did you have any other background in sport or something, and then you transitioned into that?
Not much of a background in sports. I mean, I played some tennis growing up, which I was half decent at, but no, I really just started, weight training, just like why all guys do for their impress girls or for, what have you. And, I think that gradually kind of evolved in me really enjoying lifting and wanting to like lift heavier weights.
But it kind of really is a sport that goes from like focusing on aesthetics to focusing on performance then.
Yeah, 100%. It was kind of, I would say it was kind of that evolution for sure.
Yeah. Do you convince any of your clients to go into that? Would it be a sport for beginners?
Not necessarily. I don't tell people like, oh, they have to do powerlifting unless it's something they want to do. I do tell, I encourage folks. Well, first off, I encourage folks to do any kind of movement that they enjoy and find sustainable. I also do kind of gently encourage some form of weight bearing exercise. It does not have to be powerlifting. Just any, even if it's doing some like push-ups at home or working towards a pull-up or things like that. I do encourage people to do that just because of the benefits on like bone density and all of these things, that it can have.
Do you have any advice for any kind of novice trainers that want to get into powerlifting?
I would say to start, just to really start, working on, back squat, bench press, deadlift, maybe hire an experienced powerlifting coach or someone who really knows the sport who can kind of help with technique, especially technique that is competition, kind of sufficient for competition. So like a proper paused bench press, squat with, with proper depth, deadlifting, locking your knees and not using straps, so kind of just getting a feel for the main movements, and working with a coach who's very experienced with it.
What considerations would people have to make around their nutrition in order to optimize their performance in powerlifting?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is, unless someone needs to lose a significant amount of weight for their health, is just eating enough in general. Eating enough to support muscle gain, eating enough calories, eating enough protein. If you are trying to lose fat, not having the deficit be too large, and again, kind of spending much of your time in maintenance or a slight surplus. For that reason, I would say that would be kind of probably the biggest, biggest piece there, in terms of nutrition.
Yeah, definitely. Where can people learn a little bit more about you and about your services?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on Instagram. My handle on Instagram, very not creative. It's at PowerlifterDietitian.
I think it's pretty not hard to find you.
Yeah, and dietitian is spelled with 2 T's, so it's Powerlifter DIET. Wait, it's Powerlifter DIETITIAN. Powerlifter Dietitian. For folks, at least in the US, who want to schedule an appointment with me, maybe, their health insurance might cover it, danfeldmanrd.com, also as well. But really, my Instagram is kind of where I am most active.
Yeah, I'll have it all in the show notes anyway, if anyone wants
Sweet.
to reach out to you. And we have a bit of an American audience as well. So,
Perfect.
Listen, Dan, I really appreciate your time today. Can't thank you enough, and I hope we get to do this again.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, my friend.
Thanks for watching. If you like that episode and you want to see more content like this, make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you on the next one.